Okay, so today, Mike and I are going to chat about how to take Dahlia cuttings, but there's a good amount of people on this call who also take cuttings. So my hope is as we go through this presentation that if you're doing something a little differently or have thoughts, I'm fine if Mike's fine for you to kind of like pop in and let us know, and I'll add your thoughts. I've got three screens going, so I'll add your thoughts into the presentation as we go, and that way we'll kind of capture everything that people are saying. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and let me know if you guys can see that okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good.
So I know usually I kind of mute people as we go, but if you are actively wanting to hop in and speak up, feel free to come off mute. Um, so to start with, we're going to talk about cuttings, and this is a picture Mike sent me, which I thought was so good because you can kind of see where Mike is cutting that shoot right off the tuber. So I thought it was a really great close up to kind of get us started on what we're going to talk about today. So I do have a table of contents. So later, if you want to skip through and just reference whichever part that you're most interested in, this will kind of walk you through it. So just a general definition, I see we do have some new members on the call. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page terminology wise. But with dahlias, there's different ways that you can propagate. And almost all of us, I think, are familiar with tubers. If you have a tuber, it's an exact copy of that parent plant. The same thing can be done with a cutting. So it's really a portion of the plant that is typically the stem, the leaf or root that's cut from the parent plant and used to propagate and increase that. So, and that term cutting isn't just for dahlias. You could take cuttings of all kinds of plants, but for dahlias, we're usually talking about, that shoot, that stem, or a leaf cutting. And I'm not going to go into leaf cuttings on this call. That's a little different. We can talk about it at the end if you're interested. So we're just kind of talking about that stem or that shoot today. And if you're a new member, the other thing that you might want to know is if you're growing dahlias from seed, those are unique dahlias. They don't look like anything that's already on the market, or that they might look similar, but really they're just a completely new plant. So not a clone of another dahlia. Oh, this slide is kind of like the supplies you would need to get started, and you don't need to purchase all of these. You can we'll kind of roll through it. So for the rooting medium, Mike is holding, this is the Oasis cube, right, Mike? You're muted. Oh, Mike, you're muted.
I talk better when I'm muted. Yeah, that's just an Oasis cube that's formed to fit into the tray that it goes in. So there are different kinds of forms and designs of those, and you can pick up different things similar to that at some of the local, or not local, but go online and you can find some floral displayers that will have some different types of that same Oasis to use. But that's what we use out at Willoway. Yeah.
And I use Root Riots, which you could purchase off Amazon. They're similar. I think there's a picture in the future You could also use perlite. You can use dirt like potting soil. Um, for a minute there, I thought of something else and now I'm totally spacing on it. Jenny, I know you're on this call. Do you use anything different? Or Jenny was on the call. I think she dropped off. So out of those options, you can kind of pick one to run with. And on the next slide, I have links to kind of help you find these products online. So for tools, Mike, you use scalpels. Can you kind of talk us through where you're buying those? And
Well, actually, these are little industrial scalpels, similar to, I guess, what you would call a medical scalpel. And uh, they were purchased by Dave Cap several years ago, that fit into a small handle. And it's almost like using an X-Acto knife, only it's a little more streamlined, a little easier to use. I think he got those from Granger, I believe. And you can, there's two different types of blade. There's one that's uh, steel, and I forget the other one, but it's kind of, it's corrosion free. So that's the ones that we get. So there, you can replace the blades in them. But I believe that's where he had them. He bought a supply. We still got blades, and we still got a couple of the original handles that we use out at Willoway. But anything, I thought I initially used just an X-Acto knife because that's easy to work with. But something with a blade that'll give you a nice clean cut. So that's kind of what we do.
okay. You're gonna need some kind of tray to put your cuttings in. You can use like a 1020 if you're familiar with seeds and starting seeds. Mike, the Oasis ones come with their own trays, is that right?
Yes, you can get them with their own trays, right? And then they will. You can also order then the extra Oasis cubes. You can get those in boxes individually too. But there's a lot of them that, like I say, not necessarily just the cubes, but rectangular ones too that are already in the tray. So you get the whole set. So it makes it easy for everything to line up and things. Yeah.
Hey,
And
Mike forgot one of the rules.
oh, it's one of the rules.
At Whirlaway, if you don't dip it in solution after every cutting, you get demoted to filling pots
Did that happen to you, Bob?
once.
That was on my list, Bob, to tell them about the sterilization, but that's right, correct. That's a very important part
I
of
got
it.
benched, but I remember it to this day.
I'll never make that mistake again.
But yeah, when you do the cutting, you certainly want to sterilize that blade as best you can. And what we did out there, or what we do out there, is use I think a 10% bleach, 90% water, and dip the blade in that initially. Then the blade would go into just clear water and cleaned off. And then you would do the cut, and you would clean that blade with that same process after every cut of a different variety. So if we had maybe 2 or 3 tubers of, say, Baron Ron, and we were doing cuttings, we would we would cleanse the tool before we did the first cut on the tubers, and we wouldn't have to do it on the other 2 tubers because it would be of the same variety. That's what we've done. But to be safe, you can do it on every cut if you'd like. But that's what we've kind of found to be an okay method for us.
And Mike, what if you have 2 plants of Baron Ron?
2 different tubers.
2 different, yep, they came from 2 different plants. How would you do it?
We would sterilize it just singularly,
So not,
not for each one. That was what if it was the same variety, and I get what you're saying, right? You could have one that was a virus and one that was not, but that's what we do. And for every cut would be probably a more prudent thing to do.
I just don't want Ron coming for us afterwards, Mike.
No, Ron, no, I'm not worried about Ron. He's been the one that's taught us a lot.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the sterilization is an important thing to keep things so you minimize the chance for getting any kind of infection.
Yeah. And then I just have some miscellaneous. So rooting hormone, it is optional. And I'll have a few brands. You can see in this picture, Mike uses the Garden Safe Take Root brand. And you're going to need to label it. So here you can see Mike is labeling all of his tags. I
You
find
see the tag on the table too, don't you?
I do. What an unknown. You lost.
That's the question mark, right? That happens. So, right.
The other thing I think is really important, and Mike does a really nice job of this, is the date that you took the cutting. And you'll find as you start to do this more, that some are just way slower to root than others. So if it's been a couple weeks and I still haven't seen a root, sometimes I'll like peel that cube back to just look at it and see what's going on. But for me, it's good to know, and I take notes next season. Like, here's an example, KA champagne for me can take over a month to eye up, and then it takes a decent amount of time to root. So to plan for next year, I pull that variety out way sooner so I can get it potted up and going so I have time to make cuttings for it. So I love that Mike's putting the dates on that too. So your labels are plant tags. Mike, I wanted
Yes.
this, which is the Mister. I thought you could walk them through how Willoway does it.
Well, this year it's an interesting change. The one that we had been using up to this year was just a bench mister, which was a water line run. And then there were several openings that generated water, and there were like rubber plugs almost that you could direct the spray. And then we would have the cuttings underneath that spray on a bench. And underneath that bench that the cuttings were sitting on were rubber coils that were partially heated, or at least they were supposed to be partially heated. So at times there was bottom heat along with the misting. And I think that was an exceptionally good setup for us. I don't think we had any more than maybe 10% of things that went belly up out there. And I think a lot of it definitely was because that was the setup. But one thing that, and I remember Tony Evangelista told us, because Tony would come out, he was certainly the guru before any of us, but he always mentioned that even with the cuttings that he did at home, the necessity to give them a mist. And that does help. And he says, even if you're walking by them, every 20 minutes or so, just to make sure that they get a mist and that medium doesn't dry out. So that's kind of the way it was at the old place. Where we're at now this year, it's a whole different setup. It's an automated mister. It's got long arms. It takes in probably, I don't know, 30 to 40 feet lengthwise, and it runs on a bar, and all of the seedlings and things are on the floor, which is heated, and they do their propagation of their stuff in that building solely. So it is certainly a little more temperature controlled than the one we were in. But that mister is timed, computer timed, to come and make a swipe, and it can cover different sections of the floor, or it can cover all of the floor depending on what plants they want to mist. So it's a slick little deal. The only thing is, it's about all of our stock right now is on the floor, and the mister is probably 3 or 4 feet above the floor. So you got to bend down a little bit and watch yourself when that bad boy's moving. But it's pretty effective. It's pretty amazing because they can program it to hit different sections. If they've got like 5 or 6 different varieties in there, they can set up a different misting system for each variety, and that mister will do that. So that's pretty slick. So that's what we're kind of using out there. But at home, I just use a little hand mister, and as Tony said, as I go by, I just kind of make sure that the medium is moist and give them a mist every once in a while, and I think it does help.
Do they still have nutrients in their misting spray?
Yes, they can. That's what they can control that too, Bob, with the computer. It's all computerized for the water outlet, and then for the different fertilizers in that they need for those cuttings in there. So yeah, it's pretty slick for sure.
One other thing on the rooting hormones. I thought we got new ones every year for out there for the cuttings.
We try to do that. Yeah. I think I opened the box when I was out there and I saw from 2020, 21, and 22. So yeah, we get new ones every year just to be safe.
Jess and Mike, before we get too far from the Bear and Ron story, I learned something this year in some of the analyses that we did, and just specifically on Bear and Ron, I literally have, I think, just 2 plants of Bear and Ron that were literally virus free, and I have other Bear and Rons that are that have virus. So I guess my counsel would be that it ought to be plant by plant when you're doing the doing the sanitization. I think it ought to, if it's at all practical,
Oh,
you ought to try it between plants, because there isn't any reason to sanitize within a plant, but there it really is between plants. So anyhow, you have the potential to have a clean one and a virus one based on data from this year. So anyway, that would be my counsel if it's possible.
Oh, that certainly is possible. Thank you.
Yeah. Going back.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. Going back to misting, the other thing that I've noticed this year, I used to have all my stuff in my dining room where it was a little colder. We keep the house around 64. Talk to Nick about that. I feel like it's a little cold, but it's 64 and it's pretty dry. And this year, so I found I needed to mist more often. And at that temperature, I used to have stuff on a heat mat. This year, I have everything in a grow tent, and the temperature is above 70. It's in between 70 and 74, way more humid. I haven't really needed to mist. I do make sure things stay damp, but nothing goes on a heat map. That I started that way and things were just rotting. It was like way too hot. So keep that in mind as your environment. You're going to have to kind of figure that out for yourself as to how much you need to keep it humid. That humidity dome I used to use, I don't even need that in the grow tent. It's like 80%, between 70 and 80% in there all the time. All right. The last one is like some kind of mycorrhizal root enhancer. I use this a lot. I have a list of a couple. I'll just skip to the next slide. A few products for you. So Myco Plus is the one I've been using the past 2 years. I've had really good luck with it. If you were on Amazon, there's a number of brands that you can get. So feel free to read the reviews. The one thing I'm trying this year that's not on the slides is this Dr. Root product. And I picked this up from Indoor Gardens here in Cleveland. They do like a lot of hydroponics. And with this, you kind of mix it in the water and then you put your Root Riot or your Oasis cube directly into the water and let it soak up. And then put your cutting in and put it in the tray. So I've had pretty good luck with it this year. So I might switch that out for the Myco Plus in the future, but you really just probably need just one. All right, so setting up your space. So this is what I do. So this picture's my cutting bed, and it is a big Rubbermaid tub. It's probably 2 feet wide by 8 inches, maybe well, it's over 6, so probably like 8 to 10 inches tall. And it's filled with dirt. And then I just line all my tubers vertically in that tub. And I put a label at the start of that variety and at the end of that variety, so I don't get things mixed up. Other ways to do this, so I do it because I do not have a ton of space at my house. Like I have a small house, but you could do individual pots for each tuber. You could do pot roots like Mike has out at Willoway, where last year you grew that plant in a pot, and then you store it in that pot, and then you take cuttings off that pot tuber. You could do individual Ziploc baggies to get them going. And I think Jenny fell off the call, but I do have a picture of her stuff at the end, and it's going to blow your mind. You can do like not the individual seeds for the 1020, but the bottom tray without holes. You can fill that tray with dirt and just line your tubers horizontally in that tray and cover them with dirt. And that's another way you could do it. You could probably get like, well, depending on the size of your tuber, between maybe 10 and 12 in that tray that way. So basically you'll need some kind of container that you can fill with, and Paula put this in the chat, instead of dirt, soil. So you're using a potty mix. So thanks, Paula. I'll fix that on the slide. So basically it just needs to be covered up. I leave the crowns exposed, and that makes it a little easier for me to get those cuttings. Mike, do you guys do that as well?
Yeah, we kind of use the idea that you have of the rubber tube. We've got some old rubber trays from Willoway, so we fill those up with their potting mix and then put the individual tubers in. At least this year we are, because like you said, we're limited with space too. So this does help from that standpoint. Otherwise, we would probably start putting them in pots. One thing about this that I like is that you can have the individual tubers in there and monitor them. If they do start popping an eye, you can pull them out, put them in a pot, you know, that one's going to be good. It's kind of a way too that, you know, not saying all of these tubers are going to eye up. So, you know, kind of saves you a little room, and that, you know, that the ones that you do pot up do have viable eyes and should be productive. So that's kind of how we blend, I guess, both ways in doing it. Right.
Yeah. And for me, I leave these in this container until I'm done taking cuttings off of them. So I might take, I don't need a ton, unless like I just trade with friends or whatever, but I might take like 4 or 5 cuttings off one tuber, and then that tuber I pot up. I'm not doing 30 or really more than 10. And I've seen online that people recommend, if you want to take that tuber and pot it up, or like put it out in your garden, to not do more than 10. Mike, I don't know if you've heard. Like,
No, I haven't heard of any particular number, but I do know just from kind of watching, as you take more and more cuttings, the cuttings do get a little weaker and things as you take more of them off. So yeah, I would kind of limit maybe the number that you take off to make sure you have some good strong ones. Correct. Yeah. You know, one thing I'd like to say, and you kind of brought it up just now, Jessica, about taking numerous cuttings. And this is to Ron. I think I misspoke, Ron. What I meant to say is pretty much what Jessica said. If we'll take multiple cuttings off one tuber of a variety, then we certainly would dip the tool and sterilize it and take cuttings off of another one. You know, sometimes as one gets a little older, until somebody hits a bingo, but I did want to clarify that. So we do that in between tubers, but we don't do that, you know, if we take maybe 2 at a time off of a tuber, then after that, correct, we'll sterilize it. And if it's another tuber of the same variety, then yeah, it'll be sterilized. But if we take numerous, you know, more than one off the same tuber, no, I don't do that. But
Yeah.
it would be sterilized before the next usage. Right.
Yeah, perfect, Mike. I was surprised, kind of surprised that you said that I misunderstood what you said earlier. But
No, I think I just didn't say it right, you know, plain
Well,
and simple.
I will also want to go back to, gosh, I think it's Nick Kazapis, I think, was the one who used to say that the plants that grow from the, you know, seventh, eighth, ninth cutting off of a tuber are likely to be like open centered, or, you know, not be as true to the
Right.
tuber, true to the cultivar as the first, you know, 6 or whatever. So, you know, that's kind of old story for the, you know, for the guys who were doing it back then.
Right.
That's good.
Is that true? Is that really true?
I don't have any experience to argue either way. I just am reflecting, you know, what I heard, you know, 25 years ago.
No, I'm not. I'm just curious because who knows, you know, who knows? But I was just thinking, if you're cloning, you're getting the exact same DNA, and you're just basically cloning, and it's starting from once it grows, it should have. I'm curious on why that would be.
And I don't understand why it would be, other than, you know, maybe back to Mike's original comment that the 10th one off doesn't look as healthy as the first 2 off.
Yeah.
And
I'm
Jenny,
not doubting it. I'm just curious. I never thought about it, but
I don't know the basis of it. It's just kind of an old, it's not a new story.
and you can kind of see that, Jenny, I think. Like I have 20th Ave memory, this far back one up here that I'm gonna pull out because I'm at 5. And I'll show a picture a few slides down, that I can tell those sprouts are just looking different than the initial ones. It would be curious to like do one with 10. You've got the room, Jenny. This is your homework
I
for the
know.
summer.
I am actually curious now. I might want to test it. I am, because it would be fascinating to see if that's, you know, that's so. But it does, and I've always wondered if the amount that you can take off it has to do with the energy in the tuber. Like if you have a big old fat potato, can you take more cuttings? As opposed to obviously something that's skinnier is gonna. I don't know. This is what I always thought, but I don't know if that's true or not either. But I just assume that if it doesn't have as much energy or starch in it, it's not going to last as long as one of those, you know, giant fatties.
I heard about that from somebody else, and even my father years ago when he grew them, that the tuber loses its vitality when after you take so many off. And I heard about that from somebody else too.
And that might be what Ron's talking about. What he's heard is that the resources to make a good cutting is diminished because you've done so many of them.
Yeah, Jenny, I feel like you're our speaker for November and you just fill us in on the science experiment over the summer.
I do write when I do have a tuber that I want to get some cuttings off of for something. I do write skinny or fat on it, so I know that, hey, don't, because I want to know, like if it's something skinny, I'm thinking I might get 1 or 2. Don't push it. But if it's fat, I'm going to push it.
Well, the
So
clumps that we're taking cuttings off at Whirlaway, we've got some really nice pot roots with multiple tubers to the crown. It's not like we're chopping them up first, but we've got really nice.
Then you should be able to get way more than 10 if you're using a whole clump, right?
Well, you do get more, but at the same time, as those numbers decrease, even on the pod root, you can tell that those cuttings start to weaken. So I think it does reach a point, whether it's a pod root or whether it is just a singular tuber, that at some point I think, yeah, you know, enough's enough and you need to stop. It just, I think a lot of that too depends on variety. I've seen small ones that have come into Willoway that have produced just as much as some bigger ones. So, you know, I don't know what's inherent or what really dictates that, but I do think the more that you take, I think it does weaken the latter cuttings for sure, and maybe the production of the tuber when you put it in. I don't know.
How much would play into it? So when you pot up the tuber or whatever, and it's been growing for a little bit and it's got a good root system, now it's able to take in more nutrients from the soil. Wouldn't that play into it too, making stronger cuttings? Because you're not only existing off of the energy off of the tuber, now
Right.
you have, so I'm thinking you would get maybe more cuttings off of something that has more of established root system.
I would still have to say that as the first ones are always the best ones. And as you go a little later, now I haven't gone, I think, you know, I've never gone to take 7 or 8 off the same variety because we don't need to do that. Sometimes I've taken a little too many, but I've never gotten to that point. So I kind of shoot for what we think will sell and try for that number. But the other thing too is we used to, as Jessica does, we used to have all the tubers in the tray. We used to take cuttings off the tubers in the tray, and they would develop, and we would, at the end of the program, they would be all root bound, and the guys would tell me, well, just take them out of there and put them in a pot. I'm going, whoa. And a lot of the roots were entangled and stuff, and you go, oh, this ain't gonna make it. Well, we put them in pots, watered them, and a couple days later, bingo. It was kind of amazing, the abuse that they took. But that's why we decided to, well, let's get them in the individual pots first and let them go once we know that they're going to grow. So, but yeah, that would be a good experiment for you. See what happens.
All right. So the other thing that I wanted to, because we do have some new members on the call, I just wanted to talk about real quick the basic anatomy of a tuber. And what's up here in the pink is the crown, the purple is the neck, and the green is the tuber. And down here, the skin comes just a little bit, but you can see the shoot coming out of that crown of the tuber. You can see there's eyes. So this tuber, I can see like 3. I can't tell if this is an eye or not yet. So just reference for you, if you're just kind of learning a little more about tubers, you do need all 3 though to.
Well, I've been studying on these fruits earlier.
I mean,
Oh.
Okay. You do need all 3 for those eyes to develop. So it's something to pay attention to as you're purchasing tubers. If people are sending you a tuber where this whole top part is missing, you do not have a viable tuber. So something to watch for if you purchase stuff online. So once you get a sprout, and to me, this is where the fun begins. There's a few different ways to remove this from the tuber. And I want Mike to talk about using a scalpel first. I don't have experience with this. So Mike, can you kind of talk to us about like where you cut and how you.
Again, you know, the first thing you need to do is cleanse the tool. So you go through the disinfecting, but we usually cut a sprout when there's probably 2 to 3 sets of leaves, and we cut it right at the base as close as you can to the base of the tuber. So if this is why it's nice to kind of leave the top of the tuber a little exposed so you can get to it. Initially, sometimes they were buried a lot and you got to kind of dig to find out where the sprout is attached to the tuber. But right at the base there, right under the node, right where that knife is, where the node is, you cut below that node. And then what we do is take that off and clean up that area. In other words, you may see a couple little laterals coming up or started already. So we take those off along the sides and then clean up that sprout, put it in the root tone, and then into the cube. But sometimes you want to get it as close to that tuber as you can. But there have been times where we have cut part of the tuber and even taken that off, left it, cleaned up the rest of the stem, put it in the root tone, into the oasis, and it would grow. And the interesting thing is this picture shows, once you take that sprout off around that wound where you've taken it off, you'll see about three or four little dots that will form. And those will be other sprouts that are starting around that wound. So you do get replacements once you take that off. So that was kind of when I first started doing it, I thought that was pretty interesting. I thought if you took the sprout off, well, you're done with that for a while, but it will throw up other sprouts. And you can see there are a couple there that have been started because they were around another cutting or a wound that was taken off. And so that's how we basically use the scalpel.
And the next slide, I have a close-up of what Mike's talking about. So for me, I don't use a scalpel. What I do is I basically hold it like Mike does right here, and I just bend it back and forth until it snaps off. And it will snap off right at the base, pretty much exactly where Mike is cutting. And then that's what I use. So I don't have individual tools. I just have my fingers holding it up at exactly where Mike's hand is at the same time. So it's kind of up to, I've never had it go wrong yet, but sometimes you do have to like wiggle it. So to Mike's point, they could take a little bit of abuse and still do okay. Just make sure not to like crush it.
Yeah.
So here's a close-up of what Mike was talking about. So you can see here in the center is where that initial sprout was removed. And you can see around it, all of these new sprouts popping up. And I see this all the time on Facebook around this time of the year. Shannon's laughing, she's probably seen this. But you'll have tons of people ask, well, is that leafy gall? And it's not. It's totally fine. It's just that tuber is pushing up new sprouts around that wound. So it's completely different than things.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So once the sprout is removed, and this is what Mike was kind of talking about, sometimes they have these little laterals on that stem, and I just snap them off. Mike, do you use your fingers too, just to like pull those off?
I'll pull those off, but just below that too, about the node, you may see a little growth there. I do shave that off, so I try to make the stem real smooth as best as I can, right? Same principle though, right?
And so what this kind of does is it exposes another set of nodes on this stem. And that's where, it can start to root. So cuttings in particular, you see a lot on Facebook, as well as I didn't get any tubers from my cutting. And I think sometimes it's the way that the cutting was taken. And then sometimes it could be your soil or other factors that play into it. So we'll kind of talk about exposing these nodes. I don't have it in the presentation, but remind me before the end, and I'll kind of talk to you a little bit about how deep to plant stuff. So once you pop those back, at this point, this is where you want to dip that stem into your rooting hormone. So Mike uses Garden Safe. I use Clonex. I've tried a different brand this year. I for me, Clonex is just working better than that other brand. But, you know, Amazon has reviews for everything. So feel free to like read through those reviews and pick one that you feel like might be a good fit. And then you'll pop it into the growing medium. So this is a Root Riot cube. It looks really similar to Mike's Oasis cube that he has. And basically that's kind of it. So once it's in there, you can kind of see a little bit of that hormone around the top that kind of oozed up when I pushed it in. Then it just goes into a tray. So this is kind of my setup. So I try to do it like newest, or wait,
Oldest to newest?
oldest to newest. That's what I do. And then each day I check for roots. So then I scoot them back
Right.
too. So I'm constantly kind of looking at them and seeing how they're doing. For me, sometimes I will bottom water this. So this is kind of that like 10-20 tray. I will put water in the bottom of it if things start to look dry, and then it will soak up, just like if you're starting seeds, that same kind of mentality to bottom watering.
Jessica,
Yep.
do you use a pencil or anything to make a pilot hole before you push the cutting in?
If the stems are thicker, then there is a hole existing in it already. But there's definitely, like, I just did some Manor Jubilee cuttings, and those sprouts are thick. So yes, I took a pair of scissors and opened that Root Riot cube up more just to get it in. Yeah, Mike, do you have to do that with the Oasis?
Yes, yeah. Bob was picking up on that. Yeah, that's what we have to do, because same thing. Depending on what variety you're cutting from, you get different stems and stuff, and some of them were bigger than the pre-drilled hole in there. So yeah, you had to open them up a little bit so they'd fit in. You didn't break them.
The back
Good
of
point,
the
Bob.
paintbrush works really well. If you use the back of a paintbrush, because it's really tapered down, but it's not completely to a point, but it's a little more tapered than a pencil. It works really well. That's all I want to say.
Yeah,
To
that's a
poke,
good
to
idea too,
stab.
right? Yeah.
Okay, and Shannon just posted in the chat that this is her trouble stage, and she experiences a lot of wilting and failure. She said it may be because they are too wet. Any tips for controlling the moisture? So, like Mike said, I think I probably have around 10% that fail as well. Sometimes, Shannon, for me, I think it is too wet. Especially in this grow tent, it was a little bit of a learning curve for me. Like, I've since taken this humidity dome off, and things are doing better just because it's already so humid in there. Mike, do you have thoughts on wilting?
What I do, at least at home, I will take the tray of the cuttings, and I do use a heat mat, but then I do mist them periodically. And actually, they're grown in a closet, so not a lot of humidity. Yeah, I'm a closet grower, so not a lot of humidity and things. But I use heat mat on a portion of them. Then a portion of them I just do it under a grow light. I have two different sets of grow lights, so I kind of bounce them back and forth, give them each a chance to get a little heat. And I've never had any major problem in having them rot. No, but
Yeah.
I don't bottom water them and stuff. So I just mist the cubes and mist the leaves occasionally, just keep them moist. And especially being on the heat mat, the other ones I just mist. So I'm going to try and see which is
So when
better.
you're watering, misting, are you using chlorinated water?
I'm just using water from out of the tap.
City water, right? Chlorinated city.
No, not city water, rural water. There's a big difference.
That means well water, right?
No, this is rural water. It's out of a county system, but it's regular water.
I use city water.
Yeah, I haven't seen where it's had any adverse effect to it at all.
So
I stay away from chlorine when I'm doing any kind of growing.
yeah, it hasn't, these seem to do fine for me. That could be something you might want to try, Shannon, if you want to try filtered or distilled water. Are you bottom watering too?
So I start off with the Root Riot cubes and they're moist. And then I put a little bit of water on the bottom and I've used the takeaway root hormone and the Clonex. And I did the pencil and I put it in and then I missed it. And then I put in a humidity dome on heat. And
Ooh, maybe too much.
maybe too much.
I tried
Yeah.
taking off the heat. That's where
Yeah.
I would start.
See how it does without the heat and just the dome on it.
Thank
Do it
you.
in little stages, maybe, see how it works.
Yeah. Is your house 64 degrees like mine? Nick went
I
to
like it cold.
Nick went to Texas and I promptly turned the thermostat up a little bit. It's like, I'm gonna live this week. Okay. So here's an example of a cutting that has rooted. And so here you can kind of see those little cute fuzzy roots poking out. So this to me is like a huge win. Every time I see this, I'm like, oh, I made a little baby. So you'll see you can leave it longer than I do. I tend to pull mine out at this stage. Mike, do you let it root up a little more?
A little bit, yeah. But yeah, even if with minimal roots though, I haven't seen any real difference in potting them up versus one that's a little more established. Once they get the root system going, you're in pretty good shape, yeah.
Do you guys remove the rooting hormone at this point, or do you pot it up with the Root Riot cube and the wedge in?
So I've seen different thoughts on this. I planned with the Root Riot cube. I have torn pieces of the top off, but I never remove it completely. Mike, you leave the Oasis, right?
We leave it in. In fact, even in some of the ones that we put in out at Tom Demoline's, when we dig them up or when the guys dig them up in the fall and we clean them up, you'll even find some of the Oasis still on the crown of some of the clumps and stuff. But I don't take it off. I don't, they do well growing through it, and I just don't want to disturb them at that point.
Yeah, and same for the Root Riot cube. Like I've seen the conspiracy theories on Facebook, like if you leave them on, you won't get tubers. You'll still get tubers. I think there's other reasons you're not getting a bunch of tubers. So I've seen people completely remove it. It could be done. For me, I've got them to this stage. I don't want to kill them because I'm trying to rip that cube off of it.
I would just like to say something. I am not good at cuttings, but I've been trying to play with them. And I'm using, I think they're Root Riots. Hold on, let me just look at the bag. It's a black bag. Yeah, Root Riot. Anyways, so I've only got like 6 little things going, but in January is when I started. And 3 weeks ago, I looked at them and I took one of the cubes apart because I'm new and I don't know anything. Anyways, in the Root Riot, I had a clump of tubers. It's like the size of a dime and it had 6 tubers in a little circle. It was so cute. Sorry, but so I got tubers that quickly. So it was kind of good for a first timer to see tubers. The other ones all had like one little tuber in them, but it was so cute. Sorry. It was so cute.
Oh, that's great.
I wish I snagged a picture, Paula, because I've seen people with the photos and the tiny little tubers. So Yeah, they do. They have a will to live. Like once you get them going, they want to live and keep going. So from here, from this stage, once you get roots, what I do is I pot them up. And so this is where I use that Myco Plus. And what it is it's like granules. And there's different ways you can do it. I've seen some people put it on like a plate and then they roll that root riot cube on the plate so that cube is covered. What I do is I just form a hole where I'm going to put my root riot and I just put some of the powder in the hole and then I cover it up. Mike, do you use something like this as well?
No, we have never done that, but I do know that Willoway on some of their plants, they have some sort of same thing that they use. But when they're rooted, we just pull them out of the trays and into the potting soil they go, or the potting mix, yeah. But we don't do anything from there on.
Yeah. And then at this point, for me, I would water it like I would any other plant. So I'll just watch to see if that soil's like drying out. You can put your finger in it if if you can't visually see it. I tend to keep it a little wetter, maybe that first few days, just because it's coming from an environment that was pretty wet. Also, it really depends on the potting soil that you use. And you've probably heard me say this before. I just use the compressed pro mix a lot, and that stuff is dry. So if you're using that, you need to wet it to get it to a point where it's moist, but you don't want to squeeze water out of it. Like that's way too wet. So it should feel like a little damp. But if you're using something in a bag that's not like a compressed bale, like Happy Frog or I don't know, Mike, what kind of potting soil do you guys use?
We use the potting soil from Willoway, so it's a mixture of ground pine bark. It's got some fertilization in it and things. So it's a mixture that they use particularly for things similar to the dahlias. At home, I just use a regular Miracle Grow potting soil mix.
Yeah. So it's just kind of important to, if you're using a mix that you're not familiar with, just make sure it doesn't retain so much moisture. That would be the thing that I'd watch for. And then eventually you're going to need to fertilize with something. I use the same fertilizer I do. So in the back, you could see, oh, I jumped ahead. You can see I have a bunch of violas started. So I'll fertilize all of my seedlings and my cuttings at the same time. And that Neptune's Harvest fish and seaweed fertilizer, I think is like a 111. It's super mild. And that's what I'll use on this too. And I put it in the water that I'm watering things with, and that's how I fertilize these. I then, once they're outside, I do like a foliar spray on the leaves instead, where I'm spraying the leaves and not the soil. Mike, what do you guys use to fertilize?
Out there, our fertilization is really done not only in the potting mix, but in the mist too. They do at some point in time set the mister up where there is some fertilization both in the water and the mister. And at home, I just basically use again, just a Miracle Grow generic spray on it.
And if you're down by Goldie and Tammy at Yoder's Produce, you'll hear me sing their praises too. They sell this fertilizer by, I think it's a gallon, right? I think it's a gallon, and it's like $10. It's way cheaper than you could buy online. I'm fairly confident it's Neptune's Harvest anyways, that they bought in bulk and then they've put it in jugs, because you can buy like the huge gallons of Neptune's Harvest from them as well. So if you're close to that area and want to take a road trip, you can get a couple gallons of those. And that's what I use outside during the summer as well to spray stuff. It smells really bad though. I feel like I should tell you that. Okay, so as things are going and as they grow, this not only applies to cuttings, but if you're starting dahlias inside and taking them out and not starting dahlias in the ground outside, you have to harden them off just like any other kind of plant that you're starting. Like if you grow tomatoes, you might be familiar with this as well. So they need to like slowly acclimate to being outside. And a lot of times I'll start them in shade and then slowly expose them to more sunlight over time. Mike, I know at Willow Way, it's just in the greenhouse, but you probably recommend the same thing, right?
Yeah, I do the same, exactly the same thing. I found out I'd get all excited when I first started doing it. That, wow, they've rooted, they're taking off, they look good. Nice day outside. Shoot, I'm going to put them outside. Leave them outside too long, and all of a sudden, all your hard work has pretty much gone down the tube. So, yeah, you got to do it a little at a time to harden them off, and it really works better. And like you said, starting them off a little bit in the shade, then just getting them out in the sun and going from there. But you don't want to overdo it, get too rambunctious with it, for sure.
Yeah, I put a little tip here, but by the time something like this is ready to plant, I still have like another. I'm trying to shoot for late April this year. We'll see, but I'll have a decent sized plant, probably close to a foot by the time I'm ready to plant outside. So in those cases, I will sometimes remove those lower leaves and plant the entire thing deeper. And then that gives me more nodes for roots, which in turn should get you more tubers. So if you're a little worried about your cuttings producing tubers, or let's say you bought from Stonehouse or another company out there that are selling cuttings, you can just take those lower leaves off and plant it a little deeper. Or in turn, if you're doing hills, you can hill that dirt up over it. So I thought I'd touch on common problems. And I did ask, you can't see the photo credit, but somebody posted this on Facebook and I asked their permission to use this photo. But you can see there's browning of the leaves. And Shannon, I'm guessing yours is happening closer to the root riot cube where it's turning black and going, rotting. Sometimes you're going to see it on the leaves too. And this, and it seemed like in the comments, it's because her environment is too hot and it's browning or burning. People on there, and what I do if I see this, I remove those leaves. It's not going to hurt the plant itself. I just sterilize some scissors and then I just chop it right out. What Shannon has is that rotting of the stem. I was hoping, well, not hoping, but I was kind of hoping one of mine would rot this week and take a picture of it to show you. But essentially, it's like right at the level of that cube, it's going to go black. And usually you could tell because the whole cutting just tips over and like wilts, like you can't miss it. The other thing, and Ron will probably be not happy to hear this, but you often see signs of virus much sooner in cuttings, and that's because the plant itself is stressed. And I think if you've purchased from Stonehouse in the past, and they've openly talked about this, but I think it was not last year, but the year before, they kind of had an outbreak a little bit in their facility where people were receiving cuttings and within a week were showing signs of virus. And for them, it completely changed how they do things. And now they're, taking clones like they spoke last time and can say they're virus free. So for them, it changed everything. But this kind of vein clearing is what you're going to want to watch for. That's one sign that your cutting could be virus. And if you're planting tubers and you have great soil and you fertilize, you might not necessarily see these symptoms. Ron, do you want to add anything to this?
I didn't expect the comment, Jess, but it certainly is interesting. We have in the work that we did last summer, we had 3 or 4 vendors that provided tests, material for us to test, that were exceptionally good and did very well. And one of the things that they cited was that they were, excuse me, that they were able to see virus in the young plants. And they were not as, as forthcoming as you've been with that picture. Just that's basically the observation, the vein clearing.
Yeah, so that's kind of a easy way for you. Like if it looked healthy in your garden last year and you're taking a cutting and you're seeing this, I'd chuck it all. I'd throw the whole thing away.
And that is a classical virus symptom. That vein clearing is the most classic symptom for most of the viruses. TSWV can be very different, but TSV and INSV and the others tend to show vein clearing, including CMV. So thank you. I most interesting comment, Jess.
I'm looking out for you, Ron. We're getting it in. The other thing too, just to note, is just because you have roots in that root riot cube, sometimes for me, when I pot it, I still have plants decide to give up and die. So I don't know if leaving them in the root riot cube until they have more roots might help with that. Mike, do you see that on yours?
No, I let mine go a little longer. So when we transplant them, I haven't seen a large percentage that we've lost after they've gotten in the pot. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's, again, could it be this, the mix that we use out there? What could it be that gives the success? Because it's a pretty nice setup, more than I think what you can do at home. So that might be an advantage. But yeah, we kind of let them go. But there are some at the end when we get done propagating that will have minimal roots, and we'll pot them up, and 2 weeks later they're looking pretty good. So I think, again, a lot of variables go into that particular situation.
So just something to be aware of. If I had more space, I would probably let them go longer than I do. I don't have a ton of space with stuff. All right. So let me make sure that might be the end of the presentation. It is. All right. So since then, Paula, let me minimize this, has sent over a picture of her tuber, and it's super cute. So I wanted to show you guys. So here's her little root riot cube, and you can see she's torn it away.
Wow.
Look at all those little tubers already growing. Isn't that the cutest?
Wow, that's nice.
And then Jenny, she's still on. So Jenny never ceases to amaze me. And I wanted to share her setup in her house. So this is current in Jenny's house of the dahlias she has going on. You can see some back here, monster plants. She already has blooms. But this picture, Jenny, is one I love. If you don't have a ton of space, and let me zoom in a bit, this is a great way to get your tubers started if you don't have enough room for individual pots. Jenny, do you want to talk through what's happening here?
Well, it's just because I'm doing it in my basement, so I don't have the right humidity situation. So baggies works best to get them to kind of sprout. And if I leave it, I have to leave them in long enough, because if I pot them up too early, even if they have a little sprout, they kind of slow the growth. So I make sure they're good and going. And because I have so many, I just put them on peg hooks. And that's really about it. But it's the best way to get them off the floor. And then I can check on them and see who's dry and whatnot. I can just, quickly go through them, and I can alphabetize them, which makes me feel happy.
Yes, I'm all for that. And then here's kind of a picture of Jenny's basement backed up a little more. Let me make this a little bigger so you guys can kind of see her setup,
Looks like the inside of Willoway.
right?
Beautiful.
That's
Yeah.
what Mike, I was like, Jenny's so close to Willoway. She can totally,
She'll be out there.
yeah. So, Jenny, I thought this was super impressive. The other thing that I wanted to share in Jenny's picture, and I have the same thing, is over here is just a little thermometer that will tell you the temperature and the humidity of the room. And the one I have, and it might be the same one, Jenny, connects to your phone.
Yeah, the Govee.
Yep. Not only do I use it here, I also put those thermometers in my tubs where my tubers are. So over the winter, I can make sure they don't drop into freezing. Like I have a crawl space, and I'm always worried that they'll get too cold. So in the winter, I'll set that minimum temperature, and then it alerts me on my phone if it gets too cold. And then I make Nick go down there and pull them all inside. So that's Nick's job.
Jenny,
Yeah.
on those Ziploc bags, are they all sealed, or do you have like
No,
little?
I leave mine open.
They are
I leave
open.
them open. Yeah, they start off I start off slightly moist soil, and most of the time they will sprout up, and then some that take longer. Sometimes I have to go back and mist the soil. I don't let it completely dry out, but then you have to be careful. But no, I leave them open because I'm afraid of it being too moist and rotting.
Mhm.
But I watch them. I go down and I check them. Most days, but I can.
Okay. That's a good idea.
The other thing I forgot to mention until I saw Jenny's setup, and I think I forgot about it because I'm not where she is just yet. Sometimes depending on like humidity, or if it was something that I carried over through the winter, sometimes I will see signs of powdery mildew. And that's just kind of like a little white coating on the leaves. And usually at this stage, for me, it tends to be circular in appearance. So you can treat that a number of ways. You can use whole milk. I think Tammy uses that as she preps for shows to get the powdery mildew off. Regalia is like I think it's organic. You can get it off of Arbico's website. That's what I use for powdery mildew. So if I see signs of it, I just start getting stuff on a maintenance plan. And you can be proactive with it and just spray before you
Yeah, I'm done. No.
a problem. So that's one more thing I just thought of. Any questions you guys have?
And fungus gnats. Don't forget to talk about fungus gnats. Because
Fungus,
once they start and you get them, you'll want to shoot yourself.
yep, also a problem. I love like the little stickies you can get them on Amazon. Let me see if I could pull that up real quick. But to Jenny's point, once you get them, it can be a lot. If you use soilless dirt like ProMix, I find that I have them less. Okay, so let me minimize the screen quick. This is what I use, I'm gonna mute you real quick. Okay, this is what I use are these little yellow traps, and you want to get them as close to soil level as possible because those little gnats are going to crawl across the top of your soil. So it's a great way to kind of catch it. There's also, I think it's called Catchy. It's like a little machine with a sticker in the bottom of it, and it will suck those things in. That's another tool I use to kind of control it. I haven't had to use it the past 2 years, but when I wasn't using ProMix and I was using a different potting soil, I had more problems.
Jess, could you talk about your lighting, what you recommend?
So I don't think Mark is on this call, but Mark Druckenbod really is the one who helped me with my lighting situation. And let me pull it up. I have it in my Amazon. You want it to be, I forget the unit. This is what he kind of talked me through buying. I buy these Barina's T5s, but you're really looking at 6,000. You want it to be, I can't remember, is it Kelvin? Anybody here a light expert since Mark's not on? I think it's whatever that unit of measurement is, between 6,000 and 6,500 is what you're looking for. They sell these in 2-foot and 4-foot. So my shelves are 4-foot now. I don't use the smaller ones anymore. If somebody wants my 2-foots, I have them in the basement. So I use for each shelf, and let me go back to Jenny's picture. I use these same metal racks that Jenny does. I use 3 of those per shelf. So I have one in the front, one in the middle, and one in the back. And I just zip tie them onto the shelf. I found with LEDs, I don't personally need to raise or lower them. That particular brand and wattage, I'm not sure what that is. It's strong enough that even for my seed starting, I don't raise or lower the lights. I never have things get leggy. So it's strong enough that I don't worry about it. Does that help, Tammy? Oh, you're muted still. You muted yourself, but
I have the lights already. I just wanted to make sure everyone else knew about it. And it says watts.
watts. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's how you know I color for a living. I don't do any kind of like math and or electrical. Other questions you guys have?
Yes, you talked about that Yoder's fish seaweed fertilizer.
Yes, that's it.
Is that it?
And Goldie, I think it's pretty cheap, right? It's like between 10 to 14 bucks.
Yeah, exactly. Right around there.
So way cheaper than you can purchase on Amazon. And Misty, is Misty on the call?
I am.
What was that place out by you that you sent me?
Yeah, it is. So it's Middlefield Seed. And so it's in Middlefield.
So that might be closer for some of you out on the east side. And looking at their catalog, they must have the exact same printer that Yoder's does. Like they sell almost identical products. So if
It
Yoder's,
is. It's fantastic. Like from a price standpoint, even like you talk about Yoder's with what you get, like the bales are significantly cheaper than you can get anywhere else from what I've seen. It's wonderful. But it is also being an Amish store. They're open on Saturdays from 8 a.m. until noon. And they're not open on Sundays. And then it's like normal business hours during the week. So you kind of have to plan accordingly. And it's cash and check only. But
yeah,
it's fantastic for those who are close by.
Yoders, I'm using my credit card there.
Yeah, same. So that might not be a good thing, Goldie, that I'm putting it on a credit card.
I get it, yes.
I just go buy all kinds of things when I'm down there, and Nick pays for it.
Yes, I get it.
Other questions you guys have? No? Okay. Well, Mike, I appreciate you kind of helping to walk through your steps, and Jenny, thanks for popping on too, and Bob. So if you guys have questions, feel free to reach out. And if I can't, I'll loop Mike in, but if Mike and I can't answer it, I'll track down somebody who can for you.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Jessica, for putting this PowerPoint together. My input was pretty minimal, so you did a very nice job. So,
well, thanks. See, I
you bet.
can color really good, Mike. I cannot.
You did well. Thank you.
All right. So if anybody's new, kind of the next part of our meeting, we have a little bit of club business to talk about, and I was hoping to do it sooner while there is a good amount of people on, and then we'll have a Q&A session. So if you have questions or want help, all of our resident experts are on the call and they will give you the best advice. So for club business, Tammy, I was hoping you could kind of start putting you on the spot. Oh boy, you're muted again.
You put me on the spot again.
I was hoping that you could go over the tuber donation places and
Yep.
just
We
remind
need tubers. Please donate. It's what we generate money for, and we would appreciate all your donations. So we have several drop-off sites for people who are interested in donating. If you just email me, and I'll hook you up with the person who's closest to you for your drop-off site. But I do have another option. Apparently, we're having a DSO get-together on April 4th.
Yep.
And I'll be there. So if anyone wants to bring tubers, then I can grab them also at that time. So April 12th will be our deadline for tuber donations. April 19th is going to be our auction, in-person auction, which will be, is it 7 o'clock? It's going to replace our meeting. So this is going to be a first for some of us. Apparently, pre-COVID members, they're used to this, and this is going to be new for Jess and I. So we hope you attend, but it's going to be an auction. And I know Jess has already gotten quite a few unicorns, so it should be exciting. It's going to be, I'm going to have, is Pat on?
Yep.
I'm going to have Pat talk about where we're holding the auction at, if she would talk a little bit.
Sure, on April 19th, it's in the Akron Metro Parks. It's called the Brushwood Shelter. It's easy access from the Turnpike or from 77 or 271. So I mean, you can GPS the address. It's plenty of parking. If you need to unload with snacks or beverages or whatever, you can come right down next to the shelter and unload. You don't have to bring it in from the parking lot. So really nice shelter, you know, a little kitchen there. It should be a great place for an auction. And I don't think the auction this year is going to bear any resemblance to the auction of years past. Just from my experience online, bring your money.
Pat, I've got a question about the setup there. Do they have tables that we can lay out all of the donated tubers on so we can segment them and maybe people can take a look at them before they go on sale?
Plenty of tables.
Good.
I'll have them set up a row of tables up at the top of the room so that you can lay out all the tables and kind of auction from there, and then individual tables throughout the facility. So yeah, there's plenty of tables. I just have to get to them with the total number, which I'll get to them before you, so they can set it up. If you need a projection screen, they can get us one of those.
Yeah, I don't think we'll need that. But
Okay,
one
Sharon
thing,
had talked about maybe popping up a picture of
Oh,
the
okay.
variety
I,
that
I
you auction to enhance the, you know.
it's,
gotcha.
I do want the projector, so I'll make sure to get photos of everything beforehand that I know about. And that way I can help you part with your money when you see how beautiful they are. So,
Well, what I would like to do too, maybe Tammy, is get all of the stock that we're gonna have for the auction. Maybe get it out there, in advance of the actual thing. So it'll give us some time to segment them all and set them up. So
Yep.
maybe,
We can do that.
okay, we'll determine a time or something,
Yep,
maybe
we
an hour
can get there
before.
early. Yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds good.
Perfect. Good,
Yep.
great.
so a couple of things in the chat. Patrick wants to know if it's cash or credit card. So we will accept checks. I did just get little signs made if you have PayPal where you could just take a picture of the QR code and pay through your PayPal on your phone. So familiar with PayPal. Misty, it's kind of up to you if you want to do cash as well.
I'd prefer not to do cash. If we
Okay.
could do either the PayPal or checks, I think that would be best.
Yeah, and Patrick, we do not have Venmo. Misty, I don't know if that's something that you've thought about.
I have not.
Okay, Patrick, we'll look into that. I use Venmo a lot as well. But I know it's owned by PayPal, so maybe if you have a PayPal account, we could go that route. That being said, Patrick, for the online sale, which is the next day, so we'll have the auction on Friday, and then our online members only sale opens the next day on Saturday. That we will take credit cards through our website. You could just pay right online, or there's an option to pay once you come to Petiti's to pick up. And I think that's just a pickup option. Sharon, do you remember how that's set up? I think I saw you. Well,
Okay, now I'm unmuted. What was the question?
do you remember how we did if you wanted to pay by check or cash at Petiti's?
Well, we took cash and we took checks, and I have a cash box. The club owns a cash box.
Oh, sorry.
And we,
I went on the website that we had an option, right?
yeah, pay it, pick up, or pay on delivery or something like that called.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're going to do that if you want to do that this year or not.
Sure. Yep.
I have a question too, and that is, Tony had his own tubers. He created classification or whatever you want to call it. Will any of those tubers be there at the auction or for sale?
As of right now, I don't have any Tony donations, but it doesn't mean that someone in the club will donate any. It's a possibility. Right now, I do not have any of Tony's, but
I'm
maybe someone-
donating a couple of his intros from last year, Carmela Stoss.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that. That's right. Yeah.
And I've got some of his too that I think I got a couple Red Devils and a couple other of his, but there may be some.
All right. Well, that'll be a good fight, Goldie. It'll be between you and me and our credit cards, our pocketbook.
Credit cards.
When we've had the auction at Bush Funeral Home, Mike has always run a pretty good auction and got the prices pretty high. So bring your money.
Yeah, we might, Goldie. It might be a tough battle there.
He will pay.
Yeah.
He's laughing in the background.
Yeah, the thing to remember with our online sales, we do not ship. So there's a couple people posting in the chat. We don't ship those tubers. So it is pickup. Elise, you can message me. We can chat a little bit. Also, the website does not have, it should have under events the date of the tuber. Oh, Sharon, have we put that on the website yet? Of the sales?
Yes, I haven't put it as an event. It's on the activities overview.
Okay.
So if you look under events, the last thing is activities overview. That's where I put everything that I know. And I will put the auction on right after this meeting. I'll take this meeting off and put the auction on. And then a little closer to the time, we'll put the tuber sale on. And hopefully we'll be able to open up so people can look at pictures before the day that they want to buy. I think we did that last year, didn't we?
Yep. Yeah. The other thing, sorry, Rob, I missed this. Rob asked if we could bid the auction by phone. If you can find a buddy who's willing to bid for you, I'm fine. Just make sure you pay. So, and then let's see. Patrick wanted to know what was a general high amount during the old auctions, and Pat Sadaki said 10 to 15 bucks.
I think I bumped that up by about 20 bucks.
Yeah, and I think I have like some KA varieties that I would probably start at 20 bucks. And just so you know, mine will most likely be cuttings, but I might have tubers. So you would be leaving with a live plant to kind of take care of until you could get it in the ground. I will say I was at a Portland auction 2 years ago, and I personally paid $75 for something. So I think Ron and Tony and Sharon just shook their heads and they were like, "You're crazy." So
We went to a Portland one too, and they were bidding over $100 for things that I would consider kind of normal. And they all just said they did it for the club. So, but they're crazy out there.
yeah. So I don't know that we'll be on that side of crazy.
Was the word 75 bucks, Jess?
And I love them. It was a Salish Twilight Girl. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yeah.
It's like a beautiful lavender with like a darker reverse petal. I think it's a stellar. I love it. It's one of my favorites. So it is. And Tony, man, I love him. He took those little wrinkled tubers home for me because he was coming home first. And he just babied them. And he was like, I couldn't let him die after you paid so much money for him. So yeah, he really got them going and started for me.
Well, this ties in real well with the cuttings, because if you end up buying a tuber for $30 or $40 and you do some cuttings, all of a sudden you're paying maybe $10 for a dahlia versus $30 for a tuber. So there are some real benefits to the cuttings. As I used to say, you got to get your unit cost down.
It's called tuber math.
Correct.
Jess, I think that was it. The only other thing I have to say is the tuber sale. Anyone that does the online one, then we have the tuber pickup at Batiti's on April 27th, I believe. Yeah, April 27th from 10 to 1 p.m. will be our tuber pickup day.
Last year, did we have many people that didn't pick them up?
We had a few, yes.
Because that would be one reason maybe not to let them pick up if they had to pay when they ordered them. Then if they don't pick them up, it's their problem, not ours.
We had maybe some of them we called like the last hour. We did get a few of them to come by real quick because they forgot, but maybe 6 or 7 people. Barb was gracious enough to drop one off for some people. But I did have 2 people that did not show up and 2 people that I had to track down and 2 people that never, ever picked up their order.
Yeah, the one reason I like the check option, Sharon, is there's some people that just aren't super tech savvy. And it helps them to check out a little quicker if they choose that option.
Jess, did we decide what we wanted to do if we have that scenario again about, we refunded them. I don't know if that was a club decision or whether you wanted to refund those
I d-
funds.
Well, the ones that didn't pick up, almost all of them didn't pay. So I think there was only one person we had to refund, but we can, to Sharon's point, if they don't pick up, it's kind of on them.
Okay.
All right, so this sale leads me into the next part, and that's why I'm glad a bunch of people are on. The proceeds from that sale fund our events throughout the year, our shows, but it also gives us the opportunity to give back. And we have a number of things that we usually donate to, and I just want to get approval from the membership on this as well. One is, and Barb, I don't think is on the call, but Jerry, can you talk a little bit about the scholarship that we've
Years
donated?
ago, when our treasury really blossomed, I think that was after the 2003 national show, as it turned out. We had quite a bit of money, and we said, what are we going to do with this? And bounced the ideas around and never really came up with very much. One was, how about a scholarship? But then we couldn't realize, well, how are we going to get the applicants in and this, that, and the other thing. However, what was called the Men's Garden Club of Cleveland, I think at the time, and now it's something like the Gardeners of Cleveland, have a scholarship. And when we found out about that, Bob Hosta is our kind of liaison between DSO and that garden club. We donated to them, and it's worked out very well. Last year we did not, for one reason or another, but we donated, I forgot how much now.
I've got it. So I'd like to pick up that donation again for this year. It would be $500 to that scholarship. And yeah, it's for the Gardeners of Greater Cleveland.
Yeah. And I think what they do, they have 2 or 3 scholarships they give, and Barb and they have a nice ceremony. And Barbara often attends. I think Sharon may have attended one as well.
Yeah, I went one year, and the kids that received the scholarships actually spoke on what they were studying, and they were really impressive kids. So it was good to see.
Yeah, and they tend to be those who are going into horticulture someplace or other, either in a vocational or in a university setting. So it's really a good thing to do.
So in addition to that, I'd like to propose that we do the $500, which is what we've done in the past. We also have donated to the Midwest Show, which is kind of our conference show, of $1,000. I'd like to propose that we make that same donation again this year. I'd also want to do an award for Tony at that show, sponsor an award of $100 for his varieties. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is, in the past, we've also donated to the genome and the research projects for the ADS, the American Dahlia Society. Last year, we donated $1,000 to each. This year, they have a new fund in memory of Tony that I believe is going to Education Right Run. And the ADS can choose how that money is spent. I'd like to propose that we put $1,000 into that, like we've done to the virus and the genome projects. So any objections to that, or anybody have thoughts on it?
No, are we doing anything for the national?
Oh, and the national, that's the last one I wanted to ask about. Misty, do you happen to have that number handy?
Let me take a look. I think so. Yeah, so it looks like we did with 1,000 for the Midwest show, we did 1,000 for the national show, and then 1,000 for the ADS for the genome and the virus last year.
Okay, so add the national show into that as well. Any objections, or if not, I was hoping we could get a show of hands if everybody.
How much was left in the budget from carrying over from 23?
Misty, do you have that? We're
For overall funds that we have roughly $29,000.
so we're in good shape to give back.
Yeah, so maybe we should be thinking about increasing those amounts to show more support.
I'm not opposed to that. Bob, did you have something that you were thinking about?
Well, the $500 scholarship is nice, but I would think 2 or 3 times that would be something that somebody receiving it would really think of as significant and more more of an impact.
I'm not
Well, I
opposed,
think
but
it's
I
got-
just want you to know, what we give goes into a larger fund
Right.
with the other people from the garden club and other clubs like ours that give money. So it goes into an aggregate, and the kids were getting, more than just, what we had given.
Plus, maybe we could wait until we see what we make on all of our sales. And I mean, if we make a lot of money, we could be a little more generous.
Well, I would definitely though get money to Elkhart in the national now. Like if Misty could write a check tomorrow. They are in need, and they really, well, because we've gone through this before, you really want to know how much money you have in order to make plans for the shows, which will come obviously sooner than not. But
And some of their expenses are upfront expenses as well, so.
they are.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. Maybe we should go ahead with the proposed amount and then follow up, as Pat said, if we end up with more.
So
And Jerry and Jess, if you could send me where I would need to send the check to, like I can send write a check right away for those as soon as you do that.
yep, I have the address for both. So what I would like to do is approve these amounts so
Yeah.
we can get them out for this year. So all
It
in,
includes the 100 for Tony and Elkhart. So you had a total then of 3,600. 3,600.
yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. I'll move that if you want somebody to move.
Thanks, Jerry. Do I have a second? Ron? All right, all those in favor? Aye. All right. I think we're in lots of hands. Okay.
Thanks.
So
Well done.
thanks, everybody. I appreciate your willingness to give back to the community and to the other societies. So I love that. The other two things that I just wanted to mention, and Tammy brought this up, is we're going to do quarterly get-togethers. The first one's April 4th. We're going to meet at 6. It was in the digest. If you caught the digest the last time, it's there's a section about in-person meetings. There's also an RSVP. If you deleted the digest and you still want to come, just email me and I will add you to that list. But I want to get a count so we can actually reserve space for us. Last time Tom was on one side of the bar and I was on like another side. So I'd like to be able to get us all in one place. So feel free to email.
Where's the meeting?
Sorry, Sharon, what?
Where's the meeting place? on the 4th?
And you're gonna ask me, let me pull up MailChimp. But it's in Independence, and I want to say it's
Winking Lizard?
No, I think it's Slimans this time. It's not far from Winking Lizards. It's in a strip plaza. It's real easy to find right off of Rockside. And they've got a real big room in the back that would be great for our group.
yeah.
Super.
So yeah, it's Lyman's. So just let me know so I can reserve that space. And then the other thing, Sharon, I was hoping you could talk about the grazing party.
Bye.
Yes, we
Nice.
are having the grazing party. If you've been before, we usually have a lot of fun. It's a little late this year. We'll have to plan earlier next year, but it's going to be on the 13th, April 13th. It will be at the Mobius Nature Center. You just in Aurora, and you just come at noon and you bring an appetizer-ish thing to share. And then we usually end up talking about dahlias, oddly enough. And everybody's invited, and also we're inviting people from Mahoning Valley. We don't usually get too many, and it's not an official party. It's just one hosted by Jim Shuey and Rob and I.
And I don't know if Mike's going, but Mike always has killer desserts. So
I plan on it.
all right, challenge.
Desserts.
Love a good dessert. Mike seems to bring my favorites. I feel like Barb had a real good one too last time.
I'll have to get together with my consultant.
Oh yeah. Okay. That's all I had for business. Does anybody have anything else that you want to talk about? If not, we'll move to the Q&A. Okay, anybody have any general Dahlia questions? Ask.
Okay, we're all in good shape.
When
Wonderful.
are we starting at Whirlaway?
B.
I wanted to know if anybody has a favorite lavender dahlia, a true lavender, not the ones that are like basically pink or reddish.
I
We're
like,
just-
oh, go ahead.
We're just looking for some lavender, and Rob's been being in the bushes, and we can't even find ones that we think we want to buy, much less buy them.
What about 20th Ave Pure Prince? Have you seen that one?
Mm-mm.
I'll give you a tuber, Sharon.
Oh, okay.
What
about beautiful?
Beautiful.
It's easy to
We do
find.
have
It's not
beautiful.
expensive. Okay.
We do have beautiful. Hopefully, well, I think I have beautiful.
Uh,
So I might have those to share.
There's also 20th Ave Old Major, but that sometimes skews a little pink. I could give you one of those too, Sharon.
Alrighty, I'll trade you something I got. We just looked at the garden last year and said, there's not much lavender in here. And that's always such a nice color for arrangements and bouquets. You know, it's just sweet.
Yeah. And
And Anna and I are working on the arrangements, for categories. So we'll have that out soon, so you can start planning for that for the show. I know, Jerry, you're always like to get that in the schedule. So we have our basic concept. We just don't have it totally worked out yet.
other questions you guys have?
Bob, did you have a question?
Yeah, Mike, when are you kicking off Whirlaway starting stuff?
I've kicked it off. We've started. We got a new location. And we've got probably maybe 100 varieties of tubers that are in trays in the new location, which again it's going to be challenging.
Well, keep me in the loop when you need help.
You're in the loop, pal. This is a real, it's a smaller area to deal with all the way around. So we'll see what happens. But you're in the loop for sure.
And that reminds me, anyone who's a new member, Veronica's on the call too. She's kind of been your contact and sending you your emails. I need to get together with Veronica and we will be sending out a form for you to RSVP for your free tubers. Some people don't want extra tubers. Some people live out of state. We don't ship the free tubers either. So we'll send out a form just asking you if you're interested and you want them. And then we will give you a couple of options for pickup. My house for sure, I've already pulled stuff up and I can start making bags, but then the rest will be at Petiti's on the 27th. So if you buy tubers online and you're picking up anyways, that would be your best option, is to pick up at Petiti's all at once.
So do we have new people that are looking for mentors?
We do. I've only had two. But if you're on this call, and you're interested in having a mentor who can kind of help you with questions during the season, I know Jerry in the past has gone out to look at people's gardens and give them ideas and support. Please email me and I will match you with somebody. Ideally, I like to do it with somebody who lives close to you if I can. If you live a little further away, I tend to pair you with people like Sharon. It's like a champ and will respond to email questions really promptly, and Ron does too. So if you're interested, definitely shoot me an email and I will get you added to the list. And if you're an experienced grower and you would like to be a mentor, let me know and I'll add you to the list of people I could pair you with. And I'll be assigning those probably after April 1st. That's when our new member promotion stops. So it'll be in April.
I've been a mentor for the last couple years and I think I've had pretty good luck with my mentees and they've had fun learning how to do it. So if somebody's in the Solon area, I'm willing to work with people.
And Bob also is a fantastic photographer. So I have to imagine he would also share his photography skills with you as well. Yet, bang for your buck.
Some of my tricks. Chris Bryant was my assistant when I was photographing his garden in September last year. I think I taught him too many tricks.
Yeah. Why is that?
Well, there's a way to get that black background. It's one of my methods without doing any photo enhancer.
Are you going to share, or you're just hoping
Yeah,
to
tell us.
photo competition?
No, I've been I have a big sheet of black fabric. And when I was doing Chris's garden, we actually attached it to a snow shovel and he held it up behind it. And then I used a reflector to get the light into the flower. So there was no background, there was no enhancing, it was all reflections and just a natural shot, but it looks like it's very controlled. And the shot that I got second place in for the ADS in the portrait was the K.A. Calicia, and that was at the Summit Mall. And I moved it down to the ground and shot it with the bunting, the black bunting that we use at the shows. And it was just a natural black background with no enhancement.
Nice.
So I expect really good photos for the photo contest in October. Let's see if you can squeeze in there and win.
He's been knocking on the door.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? No? Okay, well, I'll put this recording on YouTube and send out the email after if you want to share it or rewatch it, totally fine. But otherwise, thanks everybody. It was so great to see your faces and hopefully you're getting excited for the season. So,
Thanks,
Well
Jess.
done.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Mike.
Jess.
all right, talk to you all later.
Thanks.
Okay.